Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're diving into an article. Well, it really got me thinking.
Yeah.
It's all about how the Roman Catholic and Orthodox churches see each other.
Yeah.
And I thought it would be super interesting to unpack this, because it connects this long history
Mhm.
to stuff happening right now, like how different parts of Christianity are, well, reacting to world events.
It is really interesting how the author starts with their own, personal journey to orthodoxy.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah.
They talk about feeling this pull towards the Orthodox faith even before, it's like a big of the West. And it was more like intuition, not so much deep theological study. At first, anyway,
All right.
makes you wonder, about why people choose certain faiths and how that changes over time.
Yeah, for sure. It's so different from today, where you might see someone, exploring orthodoxy because it fits their political views or because it's seen as, countercultural or something.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
The article even suggests that this surge in interest is kind of like making some other Christian groups nervous.
Exactly. The author's argument is that as orthodoxy gets more, prominent, other branches of Christianity, especially Roman Catholicism and Protestantism, feel like they gotta react.
Almost like they see it as a threat to their own beliefs and influence.
That's the idea. They give a couple of examples, like this one evangelical commentator who started using orthodox to describe his own teachings, even though, well, they don't really line up with traditional Orthodox
So
theology.
he's trying to borrow some of that credibility, the historical weight of the Orthodox Church.
Seems like it. And then there are some Catholics who are also, claiming that Orthodox label, maybe to try and bring in people who might be interested in Eastern
Oh,
Orthodoxy.
that's interesting. So it's like a competition for who defines true Christianity.
Yeah, you could say that.
Yeah.
And all this is happening, well, alongside how Orthodoxy is shown in the secular world.
Especially with everything going on in Ukraine, right?
Yeah.
The article talks about how Orthodoxy being so connected to Russia could lead to negative perceptions in the West.
For sure, that's a real concern. It's possible that the political tensions around Russia could affect how people see Orthodoxy as a whole.
Yeah. And there's another point the article brings up that might cause some friction. They talk about how separating church and state, something we just assume in the West, is totally foreign to the Orthodox world.
Oh, absolutely. That's a huge difference in perspective. In the West, we have this strong tradition of separating religious authority from political power.
Right.
But in Orthodoxy, those lines are blurry, which can be misunderstood from a Western viewpoint.
Okay, so we've got this complex situation, right? Orthodoxy's visibility is growing, and it's causing reactions from other Christian groups. And on top of that, it's trying to navigate a secular world that doesn't always get it.
Exactly. And this is where the article really gets to the core of things, the historical relationship between the Roman Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church.
And, well, it's not exactly a smooth history, is it?
Yeah.
The author basically says any attempts by Rome to kind of smooth things over are, well, fake.
Yeah, their argument is that these friendly gestures and calls for unity, they ignore a long and difficult history, a history of power struggles and straight up oppression.
The article specifically points to the sack of Constantinople in 1204 as a prime example of Roman Catholic aggression against Orthodoxy.
That was a real turning point. The Fourth Crusade, which was supposed to be going to the Holy Land, ended up attacking one of the most important cities in all of Christendom, the heart of Eastern Christianity.
And it wasn't just random violence, right? The article talks about how the Crusaders, they looted and destroyed churches, palaces, libraries.
It was deliberate, a real attempt to wipe out the culture and the spiritual heritage of the Byzantine Empire. And the hypocrisy. I mean, the Pope condemned the sacking, but also, at the same time, benefited from the stolen treasures.
That's wild. It's hard to square those actions with, the teachings of Christ.
It definitely raises some tough questions about, well, the role of power and ambition in the church.
Yeah. And the impact of that event, it lasted for centuries. The Latin Empire that was set up in Constantinople, that just meant more persecution for Orthodox Christians. And it was a direct attempt to replace the Eastern Roman Empire. It sounds like a wound that's still open, even after all these years.
It is. It really is. And that's just one example of the historical tension between these two branches of Christianity.
It's easy to think of those events as
Yeah.
like ancient history, stuff from a totally different time.
Right.
But the article's saying they still matter today, shaping how these churches see each other and interact.
That's so important. These historical wounds, they haven't just disappeared. They still affect the relationship between the Roman Catholic and the Orthodox churches today. The author even suggests that Rome's current attempts at ecumenical dialogue, they're they're a way to kind of downplay or even erase this troubled past.
So instead of real reconciliation, it's more about like controlling the narrative.
That's what they're arguing. They say Rome sees the very existence of orthodoxy as a challenge to its own, claims of universal authority.
Huh.
And they use a bunch of historical examples to back that up.
One of the most disturbing examples is the genocide of Orthodox Christians in Croatia during World War II.
Yeah.
The article suggests that the Catholic Church, well, at the very least, stayed silent while these atrocities were happening.
That's a really dark chapter in history. The Ustaš regime in Croatia, which was, very closely aligned with the Catholic Church, they carried out this systematic campaign of terror against Orthodox Serbs, forced conversions, deportations, and mass killings.
It's hard to believe something like that could happen in the 20th century, especially in a country with such a strong Catholic tradition.
It shows the dangers of religious intolerance, I guess, and how faith can be twisted into a tool of oppression. The article even suggests that the Vatican's possible support for the Croatian state and the potential canonization of Aloysius Stepinac, a figure who was, well, implicated in the genocide, all of that raises serious questions about the Catholic Church's role during that time.
Yeah, for sure. It's a reminder that even institutions that are supposed to promote peace and compassion can be part of violence and persecution.
Absolutely. And the author says this pattern of oppression is still happening, maybe in less obvious ways.
Okay.
They talk about the martyrdom of St. Peter the Afoot, an Orthodox Christian who was tortured and killed by Spanish missionaries because he wouldn't give up his faith.
That's awful. Really shows how far people will go to force their beliefs on others.
Another example is the murder of Josefet Kuncević, a Uniate bishop back in the 17th century. Now, the details around his death are complicated, but the author presents it as a result of years of forced conversions and oppression of Orthodox Christians.
So they're seeing these events as part of a larger pattern of hostility towards Orthodoxy.
Exactly. And they think this historical context is key to understanding what's happening today, especially in Ukraine.
That's interesting. How does the author connect these historical tensions to what's happening in Ukraine right now?
They say that what we're seeing in Ukraine is another clash between the West and what they call true Christianity, with Orthodoxy caught in the middle.
So it's not just about politics and territory, but also about these deeper cultural and religious divides.
That's the argument. They believe the conflict in Ukraine is at least partly a proxy war between Rome and Orthodoxy, a struggle for the soul of Eastern Europe, you could say.
Wow, that's a pretty bleak outlook. Does the author offer any hope for reconciliation or a way forward?
Their message isn't really about easy answers or naive optimism. They want Orthodox Christians to be, well, vigilant, to remember this historical context and to hold on to their faith.
Almost like a call to spiritual resistance.
You could say that. They believe the Orthodox Church is at a critical point, a time where it has to defend its traditions and its identity against outside pressure and internal division.
It's powerful, even if it's not, well, comforting.
It is. And it's, I think, worth considering, even if you don't agree with all of the author's conclusions.
Yeah.
Understanding these historical tensions can help us make sense of current events and appreciate the complex, tapestry of religious beliefs that shape our world,
It's true. Sometimes it feels like history is just repeating itself, different people in different places.
Yeah.
But maybe by learning from the past,
Yeah.
we can find a way to break those cycles of conflict.
I hope so. After all, dialogue and understanding are the foundation of any real reconciliation.
It really is a lot to think about.
Yeah.
As we wrap up our deep dive into this article, I keep coming back to, like, what does it all mean? For someone listening right now, what can we really take away from exploring all this tension between the Roman Catholic and Orthodox churches?
I think one of the biggest takeaways is, well, realizing that those historical events, they're not just, stories from the past.
Yeah.
They have a real impact on the world, like even today. They shape relationships between different Christian groups, and they even play a role in global politics,
So it's not just about, like, theological debates. It's about real-world stuff.
That's right. Think about Ukraine, for example. The article suggests that the conflict there, it's at least partly rooted in those long-standing religious and cultural differences between East and West.
Like history is repeating itself, but with different players and on different things at stake.
Yeah, kind of. And that's why understanding the historical context is so crucial. It helps us see beyond the surface of what's happening now and grasp the underlying forces at play. It's like understanding the characters in a play better,
Right.
knowing their motivations and their backstories. It makes the whole drama, well, much more meaningful.
It's like having a secret decoder ring to understand the world.
Huh. Maybe not a secret decoder ring, but definitely a useful lens to view these complex issues.
The article doesn't shy away from controversy, and it definitely paints a pretty strong picture of the relationship between these two churches. But I think it's good that it pushes us to think critically and question our assumptions.
I agree. It encourages us to dig deeper, explore different views, and come to our own informed opinions.
Yeah.
And that's what makes these deep dives so valuable, right?
Right.
It's not about giving you the answers, it's about giving you the tools to understand the issues and reach your own conclusions.
So if someone's listening and they want to learn more, where should they start?
I think it's important to look for different perspectives, for sure.
Okay.
Don't just rely on one author or one source.
Got it.
Explore the history of the Roman Catholic and Orthodox churches from different angles. Read things written by both Catholic and Orthodox scholars.
And don't be afraid to ask questions, right?
Absolutely.
The more we learn about different faiths and traditions, the more we can appreciate, well, the whole tapestry of human belief and experience. So to wrap things up, I guess the question is, does knowing all this historical context, does it change how you understand what's happening today with the Orthodox Church? How can understanding these historical tensions, how can that help us navigate this increasingly complex world of religion and geopolitics? We want to hear from you. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring.